It all started with one post, just one post, and suddenly the entire internet felt like it had been dropped into a blender set to maximum chaos. Ally Carter, yes, that Ally Carter, the same woman who trends every 6 months for reasons nobody can fully explain, decided to reappear on the digital battlefield with allegations so explosive that even veteran gossip bloggers froze mid-sentence. And let me tell you, when her name hit the timeline, people did not scroll casually, they slammed their notifications open like they were defusing a bomb. Because according to her, there is a whole underground narrative involving 3 major celebrities, a mansion full of unanswered questions, and relationships that supposedly crossed every imaginable boundary. And the internet? Oh, the internet absolutely lost its collective mind. Within minutes, TikTok detectives clocked in for overtime, Twitter philosophers began writing dissertations, and Instagram story warriors were posting paragraph after paragraph. The allegation? That 2 high-profile male artists were secretly involved with each other, romantically. Not industry friends, not brotherhood, not we just vibe on a creative level. No. According to Ally, it was an entire secret entanglement with feelings, emotions, and late-night confessions. Allegedly. And just when the internet thought the shock had plateaued, she added another layer that felt ripped straight out of a conspiracy thriller. She claimed, again, allegedly, that both men were also involved with a powerful Hollywood couple at the exact same time. The comment sections instantly combusted. People were screen recording, reposting, stitching, duetting, and basically performing digital CPR trying to figure out if this was truth, delusion, or a storyline from a cancelled HBO series. And then came the twist that sent the entire internet spiraling into a new dimension of chaos. Ally suggested that the experiences inside that famous household, the mentorship, the guidance, the private conversations, allegedly changed the orientation of both men. People were screaming in the comments, how? When? Why? Some said it sounded like emotional manipulation, others said it sounded like fanfic gone rogue, and a few insisted there had always been vibes, whatever that means. But the most shocking part? Ally then claimed that one of the men allegedly shifted his entire dating preference afterward and is now creating content exclusively with male partners. You could practically hear the collective gasp of 1 million internet users echoing through the digital universe. Let us pause for a moment because nothing, absolutely nothing, about this saga feels normal. You have rumors, you have mentorship gone questionable, you have overlapping relationships, and you have social media turning into a courtroom with no judge, no jury, and everybody screaming evidence, while providing absolutely none. Comment sections became battlegrounds. Some defended the celebrities with their whole soul, others claimed they had seen the signs for years, and some were simply eating popcorn watching the chaos unfold because it felt like witnessing a reality show no one ever agreed to star in. But there was one question haunting every corner of the internet: what truly happened behind those closed doors? Because the timelines, the connections, the emotional shifts, none of it was adding up, and everyone knew it. So here we are now, trying to piece together a puzzle where half the pieces are rumors, the other half are reactions, and the picture on the box keeps changing every 5 minutes. And in the middle of this digital storm stands Bryshere, the rising star, the golden boy, the one everyone rooted for. The internet is now asking questions nobody ever imagined asking about him, all because one woman decided the world was ready for her version of events. Whether it is truth, fiction, exaggeration, or an emotional outburst disguised as a revelation, one thing is undeniable: the internet is watching. And the story is far from over. From the outside, it looked like the perfect Hollywood fairy tale. A 17-year-old kid who had barely gotten his footing in life suddenly found himself standing on the glittering stage of one of the biggest television shows of that decade. Overnight, he became the breakout star, the golden face plastered across billboards, the young prodigy critics swore would become the next household name. Fame, money, recognition, endless opportunities, everything stood before him wide open like a red carpet rolled out by destiny itself. But somewhere along the line, that bright, unstoppable rise turned into a strange, distorted descent, the kind that makes the internet sit back in disbelief and wonder, what tore this life apart so violently? Because whatever happened behind the scenes did not feel like ordinary Hollywood chaos. It felt like something darker, something that left fingerprints all over his future long before the public ever noticed that anything was wrong. Enter Charlie Mack, his manager during those early years, and the catalyst for a new chapter that the internet has dissected 1,000 different ways. Allegedly, he connected the rising star with 2 of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry, presenting it as a mentorship opportunity. And on the surface, social media reacted exactly as expected: this is huge, this is career-defining, this kid is about to be unstoppable. But then the conspiracy side of the internet clocked in, because according to Jaguar Wright, who never delivers anything gently, this so-called mentorship was not a mentorship at all. She described something disturbing, something that made social media threads explode, something involving long, closed-door gatherings that were far from innocent industry bonding. Days-long events, not quick meetings. Entire weekends disappearing into silence. And if even a fraction of what she described carried any weight, then whatever happened to that young actor was not guidance. It was corrosion. From that point on, his life stopped moving upward and instead began unraveling in real time. The downward spiral was not subtle. It was public, messy, heartbreaking, and impossible to ignore. Substance issues. Run-ins with law enforcement. Disturbing reports involving violence. Incidents that did not look like the actions of a man who simply made bad decisions, but someone who was shattered from the inside out. By the time the 2020 incident happened, the one where his wife reportedly fled to a gas station begging strangers to help her, everybody knew something was profoundly broken inside him. Police cars. SWAT teams. Hours of refusal. The world watched in shock as the young, promising actor from years earlier was now someone nearly unrecognizable, trapped inside a storm that seemed to grow darker every time he appeared in the news. And then came 2022, a conviction involving another assault, another woman, another life pulled into the orbit of whatever he had become. Social media had no words. People argued in the comments, entire threads filled with, "This is not normal, this is trauma, something terrible happened to him." And the painful question that everyone kept circling but no one wanted to say directly was this: what happened to that 17-year-old boy who only wanted to act? What force twisted his path so violently? Who broke him? Because someone did. Something did. And the internet was determined to find out what. Jaguar Wright resurfaced again during this chaos, this time dropping allegations that ignited a new wave of online fury. According to her, the young actor's own mother allowed him to be handed over to that mentorship pipeline, believing it would secure his career. The betrayal angle hit the internet like a grenade. TikTok exploded with creators stitching her claims. Comment sections filled with disbelief. Your own mother? How could she? This is soul-crushing if it is true. Jaguar described a moment of regret, a confession, a plea from his mother who allegedly realized what she had agreed to too late. Jaguar claimed she begged her to cut ties with Charlie Mack, to pull her son away from whatever system he had been placed in. But according to the rumors, she did not act quickly enough. And the consequences? The internet believes they can see them written all over his downfall. Meanwhile, tangled in the same era of chaos, another name kept resurfacing: August. And this is where the timelines begin to overlap in a way that sent the online world into full investigative mode. When August eventually spoke out about his involvement with Jada Pinkett Smith, it was not the confession that shook the world. It was the emotional devastation in his voice when he said the experience broke his soul. That phrase echoed across Twitter for months. People kept asking, what happened in that house? What did he go through? Why does he sound destroyed? According to internet speculation, August did not reveal everything. Some creators claim he was only scratching the surface, speaking in metaphors to protect himself from something larger. And then comes the twist that Ally Carter, out of absolutely nowhere, threw directly into the center of the chaos like a match dropped in gasoline. She claimed that the connection between Bryshere and August was not incidental. Not casual. Not friendly. According to her, the two were allegedly entangled themselves, emotionally and intimately, long before any public headlines ever erupted. And when she said it, the internet combusted. Threads, podcasts, reaction channels, Twitter storms, every platform lit up instantly. Because if any part of her claim held even 1% truth, then this saga was not just about Hollywood relationships. It was about two young men trapped in the same system, under the same influences, shaped by the same forces behind closed doors. And suddenly, August speaking out did not look like a man exposing an affair. It looked like a man trying to expose a pattern. A cycle. A secret. A system they were both quietly drowning in. At this point, the internet has turned into one giant investigation board, with fans pulling out digital magnifying glasses and connecting screenshots like they are solving a decade-long mystery. Longtime followers, people who have watched every interview, every awkward smile, every strange pause, are now convinced that the courage both men suddenly found did not come out of nowhere. They are digging into old live streams, resurfacing tweets from 10 years ago, slowing down red carpet footage, analyzing the tremble in a voice or the stiffness in a jaw. These fans are not reaching for drama, they are trying to understand why two men, who once seemed so guarded and so terrified of saying the wrong thing, suddenly decided to speak, openly, boldly, and without the fear that once chained them. There is a growing theory, whispered in comment sections and filmed in late-night TikToks, that both Bryshere and August went through something inside that world, something emotional, something confusing, something that shifted their entire identity. People believe that whatever happened behind those luxurious gates did not just influence them, it rewired them. It carved new versions of themselves out of their fear, their ambition, their desperation to belong. And when they finally stepped out, neither of them resembled the young, hopeful men who had walked in. And here is where the story stops feeling like entertainment. If even one sliver of what Ally insinuates carries weight, then this ceases to be a scandal and instead becomes a disturbing portrait of power gone unchecked. The narrative transforms from messy celebrity drama into something darker, an imbalance that stretches far beyond gossip. Suddenly, the allegations echo the same stories people have whispered about the industry for years: grooming, manipulation, influence wielded like a weapon. The kind of exploitation that hides behind smiles and photo ops, the kind that whispers promises while slowly tightening its grip. When the story shifts into this territory, everything feels heavier. It touches something raw, something uncomfortable. Because now we are no longer looking at headlines, we are looking at trauma. We are looking at young dreamers who may have been swallowed whole by a system that dangled opportunity in one hand while quietly taking pieces of their identity with the other. And so the aftermath hits differently. It is jagged. It is messy. It does not follow the usual arc of scandal, apology, redemption. Instead, it splits into two drastically different paths that tell two drastically different emotional stories. August, after years of mockery, whispers, rumors, and constant questioning of his identity, finally surfaced into the public eye with a quietness that stunned everyone. There was no theatrics, no sensational announcement, no attempt to control the narrative. He simply showed the world who he was, openly, peacefully, authentically. He entered a relationship with a man, not as a celebrity attempting to shock the world, but as a human being who had finally exhaled after holding his breath for half a lifetime. His vulnerability felt real. His calmness felt earned. And the public, surprisingly, responded not with cruelty, but with respect. People who once dragged him suddenly praised him. People who once dismissed him now admired his courage to reclaim a version of himself untouched by the emotional chaos of his past. And that sudden wave of empathy sparked a chilling question across social media. What if the story August had been trying to tell for years was not about scandal, but survival? What if his confessions were not about betrayal, but about trauma? What if the entanglement people joked about was not comedic, but deeply damaging? Fans who once mocked him now rewound old interviews and whispered, "Oh my God, he was calling for help, and none of us saw it." Meanwhile, Bryshere did the exact opposite. He vanished. He fell into a silence so deep it felt more like disappearance than privacy. No interviews, no statements, no attempts to shape public perception. Just a heavy, suffocating quiet that left fans uneasy. Some interpreted the silence as shame, others as fear, but the most compassionate voices online saw it differently. They saw a man who had buried his truth so deeply that he could not yet bring himself to unearth it. A man who had spent years absorbing blame, ridicule, headlines, and judgment while never once being asked, "What happened to you? What broke you?" His silence did not feel guilty. It felt haunted. And that is when Ally returned, dropping details that reframed the entire dynamic between Bryshere and August in a way the internet never expected. Her descriptions were not sensationalized, they were painfully human. She spoke of two young men gravitating toward one another not for scandal, but for safety. She implied that their bond was not built in secrecy for shock value, but because neither of them felt protected enough to express what they were enduring. She painted them as survivors of the same emotional storm, clinging to each other in the quiet moments when the world was not watching. Not lovers in a headline, but human beings in pain. And the more she spoke, the more the internet shifted from intrigue to heartbreak. Fans began revisiting old clips, videos where Bryshere's eyes looked hollow, where August's smiles looked forced, where their voices carried a slight tremble that viewers once ignored. Suddenly, those moments gained new meaning. These were not celebrities acting strange. These were two young men suppressing something unspeakable. The jokes stopped. The judgment softened. And a new narrative emerged from the ashes of the old one. Maybe these two were not participants in the chaos. Maybe they were victims of it. And that is where the entire conversation shifted from messy gossip to something much heavier, much more human. People online suddenly stopped laughing, stopped joking, stopped treating the situation like a chaotic celebrity soap opera. Because if there is even a slight possibility, just a percentage, that these men were emotionally manipulated, conditioned, or taken advantage of during the most vulnerable years of their lives, then the industry owes them more than trending hashtags. It owes them accountability. It owes them empathy. It owes them the respect of being heard without mockery, without being dismissed as dramatic, and without being overshadowed by bigger, more powerful voices that have dominated the narrative for years. As viewers started stitching together interviews, body language breakdowns, leaked audio clips, and the fragments of honesty that slipped through August's more recent confessions, the picture people began forming was startling. Not conclusive, not certain, but emotionally revealing. One man emerged from the chaos with clarity, unapologetically embracing his identity like someone who had finally dropped a weight he had carried for too long. The other sank into contemplative silence, a silence thick with unanswered questions and inner conflict. And through it all, Ally's resurfaced claims reignited a story many believed had gone cold. Suddenly, fans realized there were pieces missing, pieces nobody had bothered to examine before. Because now the narrative was no longer about scandalous entanglements or messy celebrity drama. It was about power and vulnerability, connection and trauma, silence and awakening. It was about two young men who stepped into a glittering world that promised them everything, only to find themselves emotionally unprepared for the cost. A world that dazzled them with opportunity while quietly demanding pieces of their innocence in return. A world where survival often looks like scandal because truth is not always loud, it often hides in the soft, shattered places where people finally whisper what they were too afraid to speak. But then came the part that truly sent the internet spiraling into a frenzy. According to circulating conversations, rumors, whispers, the kind of messy speculation that TikTok thrives on, Bryshere had allegedly turned to OnlyFans, creating adult content exclusively with trans women and men. And instantly, social media detectives were back on the case. Not judging his choices, but searching desperately for patterns. Screenshotting timelines. Reposting grainy clips. Comparing his journey to others who had once been associated with that same Hollywood circle. And when hundreds of strangers, with no connection to one another, begin describing eerily similar theories, people pause. People reconsider. People start asking themselves if this is coincidence or if the internet is building a conspiracy out of fear, pain, and half-remembered scandals. Regardless of truth, one thing is undeniable: people are furious. Outraged. Social media is ignited, burning with theories and accusations and emotional outbursts. Bryshere mother, Andrea, has become the internet's villain of the week. Comment sections are vicious, dragging her up and down every timeline. People are calling her everything imaginable, accusing her of chasing fame, blaming her for ignoring red flags, insisting she turned a blind eye to her son's emotional turmoil. It is brutal. It is relentless. And it is fueled by the internet's need to blame someone, anyone, when a story gets too big for comfort. And on the other side, a completely different camp is screaming that Bryshere needs immediate legal representation. Not next week, not when things calm down, now. These fans are urging him to sue every individual who may have been connected to those allegations. They want lawsuits against mentors, lawsuits against managers, lawsuits against anyone who could have placed him in an unsafe emotional environment. The internet is practically lining up outside a metaphorical courthouse, chanting "Justice for Bryshere," even though nobody online actually knows his full story. That has never stopped the internet before. It never will. And that brings us to the crossroads of this chaotic, tangled saga. A story pieced together by strangers who were never in the room, fueled by theories, builds, edits, and stitched videos made at 3 a.m. And the massive, uncomfortable question that hangs above everything like a storm cloud is this: were Bryshere and August